Today, we are flying with an extreme ultra-low-cost carrier that describes itself as the second cheapest airline in the world. While this airline traumatizes its passengers with the industry's tightest legroom, hidden costs, and rampant operational issues, it is at the same time expanding aggressively across borders and evolving into the next airline empire that you have never heard of. With an international product rating of just 1 out of 5 and a history full of shocking incidents, this airline pushes the meaning of budget flying to the extreme. Yet somehow it works, as Volaris Airlines today dominates Mexico's domestic aviation market while expanding across the Americas at unparalleled speed. So I wanted to see for myself whether flying with this airline really is as incredibly crazy as everyone says, because somehow before my flight I had a hard time believing it. With that, let's pick up our journey in Mexico at 6:30 a.m. Well, a beautiful good morning from Oaxaca de Juárez. The city of around 250,000 people, nestled in a valley of the Sierra Madre del Sur mountains, isn't just the capital of Oaxaca state. It's also home to Oaxaca-Xoxocotlán International, Mexico's 17th largest airport, where we'll be going now. While having the 17th largest airport isn't exactly a huge flex, having a UNESCO World Heritage Old Town and producing the best mezcal in the world definitely is. Although parts of Mexico unfortunately have become increasingly dangerous, Oaxaca stands out as one of the country's safest regions. Therefore, travel to Oaxaca is growing rapidly, and that means more and more flights, including today's trip on Volaris to Cancun. As we drive along cactus-lined roads towards the airport beneath the massive mountains, icy cold air seeps through the worn window sills of our taxi that has clearly seen better days. The same could be said for the elderly driver who fights off fatigue, but in the end still gets us to the airport safely and on time. Oaxaca Airport sits about 1,500 meters or 5,000 feet above sea level, which means temperatures here can change a lot throughout the day. Around us, some people wear t-shirts and shorts, while others are bundled up in heavy jackets. Luckily, the terminal is heated and it feels surprisingly modern for such a small town. However, over the past 7 years, passenger numbers here have doubled, and Volaris, which now offers more flights at this airport than any other airline, has played a big part in this. After a mandatory stop at the Priority Pass lounge, we head downstairs, from where it's just a few steps to our gate, of which there are only 8 at this airport. As one of the cheapest airlines in the world, Volaris has to keep costs low, while at the same time charging for as many absurd and made-up extras as possible. This not only includes check-in at the counter and even the digital express check-in, but their list of additional service fees also stretches across 4 full pages and contains 57 different cases where you will have to pay extra before the flight. And onboard purchases are not even part of that list. The list mostly includes things that are free on most other airlines. For example, you can buy an on-time performance guarantee, which gives you a voucher if your flight is delayed. Wow. There's also a baby item fee, meaning you have to pay extra if you travel with baby items, and no fewer than 4 different memberships you can buy to slightly reduce the many other fees. I'm sure in the future they will also include a toilet fee, a briefing fee, a list reading fee, and a fee. But now to the pleasant part of the journey. The gate for our flight opens on time, the boarding process seems orderly, and the ground staff appear professional. If you believe the numerous unfavorable reviews about this ultra-low-cost airline, things should be different right now, because in addition to the many extra fees, operational problems are among the most frequently mentioned complaints about Volaris. Especially chaotic boarding conditions, poorly trained ground staff, and massive delays are complained about a lot. However, I don't notice any of this. Instead of stress, I feel a sense of anticipation for today's flight as we walk across the tarmac to our ride for the day. And the 4-year-old Airbus A320neo sparkles in the bright morning sun, as if it has just rolled off the Airbus assembly line in Toulouse. Welcome on board. From our seats 7A and 7B, we have a pretty good view of the engine. Well, mostly from 7A. Enjoying the view isn't exactly easy though. With only 71 centimeters or 21 inches of legroom, this is about as tight as it gets in the industry. The pain in my leg is real, at least for someone my height, but eventually, as the blood flow cuts off and my numb legs start dangling in front of me, I stop feeling anything.
Para desabrocharlo, solo levanta la parte superior del seguro. Por favor, no te desabroches el cinturón de...
The engine spins up and we head down the single runway of Oaxaca Airport.
En nuestros aviones las salidas de emergencia están ubicadas
to the back of the aircraft. It is important that you locate the nearest one to your masts will drop down. Strongly pull on the nearest one to activate the flow of oxygen. Place the mask over your nose and mouth or chest to inflate the life vest automatically or
Spread your love. And hear what I'm saying now. Spread your love.
As we're taking off, I'm soaking in the breathtaking views, and for a moment, I forget that I'm on one of the world's cheapest airlines. Even if I can barely feel my legs right now, I couldn't care less which airline I'm flying on, because I'm too busy thinking about how beautiful our planet is. Maybe I just realized that there's more to life than reviewing airlines, or maybe it's just some of the shrooms I had taken yesterday that are kicking back in. Either way, the moment feels magical. However, as I stare out of the window, I notice a strange phenomenon you only get when flying over the mountains. The ground seems to get closer and closer, even though we are still climbing. And at one point, the peaks are so near that you can see every little detail below. So I just sit there and hope this airline doesn't save on the quality of its pilots. However, after we finally crossed the last ridges of the Sierra Madre del Sur, I realized how high up in the sky we actually are as we head southeast. To be honest, up to this point, the flight itself hadn't felt much different from your average low-cost carrier. But then it hit me. The modern A320 fleet, the pink engines, the ridiculously cheap fares, the sneaky extra fees, and even the exact same seats. Volaris is the Mexican WizzAir. For some context, WizzAir, named after the American idiom to take a whiz, is one of the largest low-cost airlines in Europe and the Middle East. With more than 200 aircraft and 32 bases across 15 countries, it has grown rapidly into an ultra-low-cost carrier that helped transform the European aviation market. And the same thing is now happening here, in a region where, until recently, low-cost flying was far less common than it is in Europe. The lead investor behind the Hungarian low-cost giant WizzAir is a private equity firm called Indigo Partners. A brief look at the portfolio of Indigo Partners reveals that they also hold a major stake in an airline in Latin America, one that goes by the name of Volaris. And that's when everything started to make sense. There are so many similarities, even when it comes to the soft product. Now, when you hear people say that there's absolutely no service on board Volaris planes, they are wrong. Volaris does offer a few nice extras, but since it's a budget airline, obviously if you want extras, you'll have to pay, extra. One of these extras, for example, comes in the form of an in-flight entertainment system. Now, since you obviously don't see a screen in the front seat, you're probably wondering if I'm blind, stupid, or both. But the trick is to access the in-flight entertainment via your smartphone. But what if you don't have a smartphone and really want a screen? Also no problem. If you don't own a smartphone, you can simply look at a calendar, realize that it's the year 2025 and finally buy one. After you buy a phone, just connect to the onboard Wi-Fi and access the in-flight entertainment system for 30 pesos, which is less than $2. If even that's too much for you, you'll have the opportunity to read the in-flight magazine for free. Volaris also offers the option to order drinks at an extra cost, so we order 2 beverages at the price of 120 pesos. And that's where another common complaint comes in, that apparently the staff is rude and barely speaks English. But I guess we got lucky again, because even though my English isn't perfect, I didn't have any trouble communicating with the crew and they were actually really nice to us. So while we sip our drinks and enjoy our 2-hour flight through southern Mexico, we don't notice much difference from any other airline. If you were expecting loose crews, broken seats or non-stop ads on the world's second cheapest airline, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. As we fly over the Riviera Maya, I start to wonder whether flying this cheaply can really be safe. But in fact, Mexican aviation follows some of the strictest safety regulations in Latin America. After being briefly downgraded a few years ago, the country has once again been classified by the FAA under Category 1, the highest possible safety rating. Also, Volaris itself has had no noticeable incidents apart from a case of attempted hijacking. Furthermore, most horror stories about Volaris relate to their customer service, which might be annoying but is rarely lethal. Currently, Volaris is not anticipating any emergencies, but of course no airline is ever completely safe. Still, the modern Airbus fleet and the strict oversight make sure that Volaris is not considered any less safe than its competitors, despite its low prices. So I don't really have any reason to worry as we begin our final approach into Cancun International Airport. Cancun's airport serves as the second busiest in Mexico and welcomes tourists from more than 120 destinations across 3 continents. And while it's not exactly my favorite airport, chances are you'll end up here too if you ever visit Mexico on vacation. Even though resort holidays in Cancun have about as much to do with traveling Mexico authentically as McDonald's has to do with healthy eating, Volaris still offers an affordable way for travelers to get there. Only if you're in Costa Rica, that is, because that's currently the only international destination Volaris flies to from Cancun. But is Volaris really as crazy as people say it is? Well, after only one flight, it's challenging to give a final answer, but I think it mostly depends on what you expect. If you're paying just a few pesos and expect a full range of services, you'll probably end up disappointed. Yet if you understand that the low fares are made possible through extra fees, do a bit of research before your flight, and simply want to get from point A to point B cheaply, then you can easily have a pleasant experience, especially if you get lucky with a friendly crew and an on-time departure. But all in all, that's basically what budget travel looks like nowadays. Incredibly cheap, but with all the trade-offs that come with it. If you want something a bit more comfortable, you can always book a full-service airline like Mexico's flag carrier, Aeromexico. You can check out my video on them right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.